The digital clock on my dashboard read midnight as I pulled into the driveway. Christmas Eve had arrived, though the holiday spirit had long deserted me somewhere between the third cardiac arrest and the fifth car accident at Oregon Regional. My shoulders ached after a 14-hour trauma shift, my scrubs heavy with the invisible weight of other people's tragedies. I fumbled for the house key, expecting the quiet darkness of an empty home. Michael was away on business until tomorrow, and Maya had texted earlier, saying she'd head to my parents for their annual Christmas Eve dinner. The thought of my 16-year-old daughter enjoying time with family had been the only bright spot of my exhausting day. When I opened the door, soft lamplight spilled across the living room. My breath caught. Maya lay curled on the sofa, still in her winter coat, her face partially hidden under a cascade of dark hair. Her chest rose and fell in the shallow rhythm of troubled sleep. On the coffee table sat an untouched plate of food and a container of her homemade sugar cookies, the ones she had spent all afternoon perfecting for her grandparents. "Maya?" I whispered, kneeling beside her. Her eyelids fluttered open. For a brief moment, raw vulnerability crossed her face before she masked it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, Mom," her voice cracked slightly. "You're home early. What happened, sweetheart?" I brushed the hair from her forehead, noticing the crumpled dress beneath her coat, the dress she'd tried on 4 times for me, seeking approval for Grandma's fancy dinner. Now it was wrinkled, evidence of hours spent in defeat on our sofa. As she sat up, the living room light revealed faint tracks of dried tears on her cheeks. "Nothing happened," she shrugged, attempting nonchalance but missing by miles. "I just didn't stay very long. Maya." I took her cold hands in mine. "Please tell me." Her eyes dropped to our intertwined fingers. "Grandma said there was no room at the table." My heart stopped. "What?" "There were a lot of people," she said softly. "Neighbors. Dad's cousins. Even Grandma's bridge club friends." The image formed painfully in my mind. My daughter, driving her 3-month-old car, carrying gifts and homemade cookies, expecting the warmth of family tradition. "I drove over around 6, she continued, the words now tumbling out. "I parked where Uncle Jack always parks and checked my hair 100 times. I nodded, my throat tight. Grandma answered the door with that smile. "You know the one." Maya's fingers twitched in mine. And she said, "Oh, we weren't expecting you until your mother arrived." The familiar chill spread through me, the same cold that always came with interactions with my mother. Helen Morgan, master of subtle rejection disguised as practicality. I could see everyone at the table, Maya went on. "They had the leaves in, like Thanksgiving. 26 people, Mom. Aunt Carla and Uncle Jack and their kids. Mrs. Peterson from next door. Mr. and Mrs. Lambert from the bridge club." I closed my eyes, already anticipating the ending. "Grandma told me there wasn't a chair for me," she said, her voice cracking. "She said they hadn't set a place because they thought I was coming with you later. She said the guest room was full of coats, but I could wait in the kitchen if I wanted." My hands began to tremble. Aunt Carla pretended to focus on the potatoes. Maya swallowed hard. "So I left the gifts and cookies and said I'd see them tomorrow." "You drove home in the rain," I said. It wasn't a question. I had driven through the same storm. Maya nodded. "It wasn't so bad, but it was. Bad in ways my 16-year-old shouldn't have to understand." The familiar weight of family obligation pressed down on me, the same weight I'd carried since childhood. 8 years of paying the mortgage and utilities for my parents. For the house I bought when Dad lost his job and they faced foreclosure. 8 years of monthly payments came with constant criticism about how I'd supposedly abandoned the family for my nursing degree. My father's voice echoed in my mind. "You think you're better than us with your fancy degree," and my sister Carla's recurring comment. "Must be nice to leave the family behind for school." Every gathering carried subtle digs hidden as jokes. Every holiday weighed down with silent resentment. For years, I had been the family mediator, smoothing tensions, making excuses, sending checks. I endured it all because that's what family required. Because leaving felt crueler than staying. But as I helped Maya to her feet and gently took off the coat she had been wearing for hours in our warm home, something shifted. They didn't run out of chairs. "Mom," she said, her voice small but firm. "They just didn't want me there." My hands steadied. I guided my daughter to bed, speaking calmly despite the turmoil inside. I tucked her in as if she were still a child, though her long limbs barely fit under the quilt my grandmother had made. I watched her eyelids grow heavy from the emotional strain of the evening. "Never again, sweetheart," I whispered as she drifted off. "Never again." Later, I heard the front door open and close softly. Michael's familiar footsteps crossed the living room, followed by the muted thud of his suitcase being set down. "Steph?" He called gently. I met him in the hallway. The untouched plate of food and unopened cookies on the coffee table told a story I wasn't ready to recount. When I finally explained, I saw a shock cross his face. "They turned her away?" His voice carried the disbelief of someone raised in a normal family. "Someone unable to grasp the particular cruelty of mine." I nodded, a cold clarity settling within me, my mother's petty control. My father's weak compliance, my sister's envious complicity. In the quiet of our home, with my daughter asleep down the hall, I made a silent decision. The one every parent faces when protecting a child must outweigh compassion for others. Some people don't deserve second chances. Some tables aren't worth sitting at, and some chairs are better left empty. The next morning, manila folders were spread across our kitchen table, documenting 8 years of financial obligation. Michael stood behind me, his hand steady on my shoulder. As I traced the numbers in my checkbook register 2300, I whispered, flipping through pages of identical entries. "Every month? For 8 years. That's over $100,000. Steph." Michael's tone was measured, professional, devoid of judgment. Before dawn on Christmas morning, still on a hospital schedule despite a rare day off, I slipped into my home office. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. The records I had kept out of habit now lay before us like evidence. "Look at this." I pushed a property tax statement toward Michael. "The house is entirely in my name. I am not covering their mortgage. There isn't one. I bought it outright." Michael nodded, jaw tight as he reviewed the document. "And these payments?" "Utilities, property tax, insurance, maintenance." Each word landed like a stone dropping into a deep well. "I've been paying for everything, for years." The kitchen light cast sharp shadows over the growing stack of evidence. Bank statements revealed regular transfers to my sister Carla for her children's private school tuition. Credit card bills showed gifts for nieces and nephews, laptops, gaming consoles, designer clothes, while Maya had learned to ask for only modest things. "Remember last Christmas?" I pulled out a credit card statement. I had bought Carla's daughter Lily a $1,000 laptop for her coding class. Maya had asked for art supplies, just watercolors and good paper. Michael traced a finger down to a handwritten note in the statement margin. Helen said Maya's request was finally reasonable. It read. Beneath it, another folder contained a stack of birthday cards from the past 5 years. Each from my parents held a crisp $20 for Maya. Each for Carla's kids contained checks worth hundreds. "I should have seen it sooner," I whispered. Morning light fell on a small leather-bound book I had found tucked under Maya's mattress last month while putting away sheets. I hadn't meant to read it then, respecting her privacy. Now, after she gave permission in a sleepy morning conversation, I opened the journal to the marked pages. Grandma said my art award wasn't real, because my school gives them to everyone. It was the regional showcase winner, only one student from each high school. Oh, Cousin Lily's dance recital today. Everyone went. Grandma said there wasn't room for me in the car. Later, I learned they took 2 cars. Christmas at grandparents again. All the cousins got Apple Watches. I got socks. Mom looked sad but didn't say anything. I don't want to make it worse for her. The last entry, just 2 months old. Haven't told Mom about Thanksgiving dinner. She works so hard. No point making her feel bad when she can't fix Grandma anyway. My hands shook as I closed the journal. She's been protecting me. While you've been protecting them, Michael said, his voice tight. You've been paying for your own daughter's rejection. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Outside, a neighbor's child shouted with Christmas morning delight. Inside, the only gift being unwrapped was the harsh truth of years of exploitation. This isn't about one dinner, I said, clarity replacing years of confusion. It's about Maya's worth. Michael pulled up a chair beside me, moving deliberately as he organized the scattered papers. You've been their safety net for years, he said quietly. They've been Maya's nightmare. The doorbell rang, startling us. I glanced at the clock, 10:30 a.m. Sarah Williams stood on the porch holding a bottle of champagne and a foil-covered dish. Merry Christmas, she called. I opened the door. I brought brunch. Hope that's okay. Sarah, my attorney friend who had helped me buy my parents' house years ago, set down the items on the entry table, reading my face. What's wrong? An hour later, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, legal pad filled with notes, champagne forgotten. It's straightforward, she said, tapping her pen against the property tax statements. The house is in your name. They're essentially tenants without a formal agreement. We can file a 60-day notice to vacate. Isn't that cruel? I asked before stopping myself, the ingrained guilt rising one last time. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Is it cruel to stop someone from taking advantage of you? Is it cruel to protect your daughter? Another text arrived. Jennifer, a fellow nurse who had canceled Christmas to cover my shift. How's your day going? Better than the ER, I hope. I sent a brief summary. Her reply was immediate. My mother did the same to my son. Call me if you need someone who's been there. Michael's hand covered mine. I'll support whatever you decide. I need to talk to Maya first, I said. We found her by the window sketching, morning light catching her dark hair. The Christmas tree lights reflected across her drawing. Mom? She asked, sensing our presence. What's wrong? I sat on the bed beside her, choosing words carefully. We're not going to your grandparents for New Year's. A flicker of relief, uncertainty, then cautious hope crossed her eyes. Really? Really. And there will be other changes too. I explained gently about the house, the financial support, and the decision forming in my mind. With each sentence, her shoulders relaxed, as if a weight was lifting. Sarah's downstairs, I finished. She's helping us draft some letters. Maya nodded slowly. Are you sure? They're your parents. The simple question carried layers of concern, not for herself, but for me. Even now, she worries about my feelings, my relationships. I could feel the decision solidifying with each passing moment. This wasn't just about one dinner, it was about you, about us. Later that evening, after Sarah had gone home promising to return with formal documents, after Jennifer had called with quiet encouragement and understanding, and after Michael had ordered Chinese food because none of us felt like cooking, I sat at the kitchen table again. The eviction notice lay before me, its formal language masking the emotional weight of each word. 60-day notice to vacate premises. Beside it was a letter terminating financial support, effective immediately. My hand remained steady as I signed both documents. Michael watched from the doorway. You okay? He asked. No, I admitted. But I will be. The weight of years of enabling toxic behavior pressed down as I sealed the envelopes. Tomorrow these would be delivered. Tomorrow everything would change. I climbed the stairs slowly, exhaustion from the emotional day settling into my bones. I paused at Maya's door and found her still awake, scrolling on her phone. All done? She asked. I nodded. All done. She set her phone aside, studying my face, then slowly, a genuine smile appeared, the first I had seen in days. Mom, she said softly, I've never seen you stand up to them. In that quiet approval from my daughter, I found the strength to face whatever came next. 3 days later, the eviction notice lay in torn pieces on my porch, Helen standing over them, cheeks flushed. Despite the winter chill, sweat beaded at her hairline, and her finger jabbed toward me like a weapon. This is how you repay everything we've done for you? She demanded, waving the torn papers. After all the sacrifices? I leaned against the doorframe, surprised at the calm spreading through me. The old Stephanie would have rushed to smooth things over, feeling that familiar twist of guilt. But now, I was steady. You'll need to leave the premises within 60 days, as legally required, I said. Helen's mouth opened, then closed. This script wasn't following her plan. Lily's robotics camp is next month, she added, softening her tone. $800. If you cover that, we can forget all this nonsense. No, one word. So simple, yet it had taken 42 years to find. Helen's mask slipped. You always were selfish, putting yourself above family. Goodbye, Mother. I closed the door on her sputtering rage. Inside, I leaned against the wall, waiting for the usual flood of guilt that never came. Instead, I picked up my phone and called Sarah Williams, my attorney. We need another eviction notice. Certified this time, I said. The voicemail started that evening. Dad's voice carried none of Helen's fire, just a weary disappointment, more effective at triggering guilt than my mother's rage ever had. Stephanie, you're destroying this family over nothing. Your mother is beside herself. Call us so we can fix this. Nothing. Maya's exclusion had meant nothing. 8 years of financial support had meant nothing. I deleted the message. By morning, my phone buzzed with extended family messages. Uncle Robert asking what this was about. Aunt Susan wondering if I was having a breakdown. Cousin Beth suggesting I speak with my pastor about honoring thy father and mother. Then came Carla's Facebook post, shared by 17 family members before lunch. Prayers needed for my elderly parents facing homelessness because my sister has abandoned her family responsibilities. Some people forget who was there for them when they needed help. The bank manager looked uneasy as I sat across from him, requesting the termination of automatic payments to my parents' accounts. These have been in place for 8 years? He asked, scanning the screen. Yes, mortgage, utilities, property taxes, and a monthly allowance, I replied. I placed my driver's license on the desk. All of it ends today. His fingers tapped across the keyboard. And you're certain? Completely. I met his gaze. I'd also like printed records of all payments made to date. He nodded, clearly relieved I wasn't emotional. People often expected women to cry when changing long-standing financial arrangements, hesitate, second guess. They didn't anticipate calm grounded in certainty. That evening at home, I created a folder on my laptop titled Documentation. Inside, I placed scanned bank statements, property records showing me as sole owner, and screenshots of Carla's posts. I opened a new document called Communication Timeline. Every call, text, and voicemail would be logged. Their tears had never stopped them from hurting Maya. The thought hit with sharp clarity as I typed, "Why should my emotions prevent me from protecting her?" Michael found me in the home office, printouts spread across the desk. "Security cameras arrived," he said, setting a box on the floor. "I'll install them tomorrow." I nodded and added a note to the timeline about Helen's visit. "Your mother called my cell," he said. "Said I needed to control my wife." His laugh carried no humor. "I've never tried to control you," I replied, "and I'm not starting now." "Thank you." I reached for his hand. "Stephanie," his voice softened, "are you sure about this?" "I've never been more certain." I squeezed his fingers. There were 26 people at that table, Michael. 26, and no room for Maya. 26, and no room for Maya. 3 days later, Helen confronted me outside the hospital. My night shift ended at 7 a.m., and as I walked to my car, her voice cut through the crisp morning air. "After all we've done for you?" She blocked my path, Raymond beside her looking uncomfortable under the harsh fluorescent lights of the parking garage. 2 nurses from my unit slowed their pace, watching with concern. I nodded slightly to reassure them. "What you've done to Maya is unforgivable," I said, keeping my voice measured. "One dinner?" Helen exclaimed, throwing her hands up. "This is about one dinner? You're throwing your parents out because your daughter didn't get special treatment?" "Special treatment?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "She's my child, your granddaughter. She drove herself to a family dinner and was told there wasn't room." There were 26 people at that table. Neighbors, bridge club members, everyone but Maya. Helen stepped closer. "I have always put this family first. I have sacrificed everything. The house is mine. The bills are ending. Maya deserves better." I moved past them toward my car. Any further communication should go through my attorney. "You ungrateful—" Helen's voice rose, echoing off the concrete structure. One nurse turned back, witnessing Helen's mask slip. "She's paid your mortgage for 8 years, the nurse said quietly. Jennifer, who had heard more family stories than anyone should have during breaks, "This is a private matter." Helen snapped. "Not when you're confronting a colleague at work," Jennifer replied firmly. Later that week, Pastor Thomas called. "Your mother spoke at the prayer group," he said carefully. "She gave quite a performance. I've also spoken privately with several members who heard her version of events. Family situations are rarely as simple as one perspective suggests," I reminded him. His voice was kind but firm. The lump in my throat surprised me. "Boundaries aren't unchristian, Stephanie. Protecting your child isn't either." The next morning, Maya's therapist confirmed what I had suspected. "This exclusion pattern shows clear intentionality," Dr. Winters said. "It's not by chance. And it's deeply affecting Maya's sense of belonging and self-worth." I nodded, noting her observation in my growing documentation. Day 35 marked the turning point. The process server delivered the certified eviction notice, not to my parents' home, but to the family Sunday dinner I knew they'd be attending at Carla's house. It was a deliberate move, one I didn't regret. Within hours, my phone rang. Cousin Martha on the line. They're living in your house? All these years? Her voice was full of shock. Helen told everyone you were just helping with a few bills because Raymond had covered your college tuition. What happened after that? Dad lost his job. They were facing foreclosure. I bought the house and let them stay, I explained. Her voice fell. And you've been paying everything? Mortgage, utilities? For 8 years? A heavy silence followed. Martha. They told Maya there wasn't space at the Christmas Eve table. 26 people, including neighbors and the bridge club, but no room for my daughter. Her voice hardened. That sounds like Helen. The dam broke. In the following days, Helen's carefully built narrative began to crumble. Extended family support faded as financial realities became clear. Uncle Robert stopped calling. Aunt Susan's concern shifted from my mental health to Helen's manipulation. I continued building my wall of documentation. Maya's timeline of exclusion stretched over 5 pages. Birthday parties where she was the only grandchild not invited. Family vacations with no room for her in the car. Holiday gatherings where her gifts were smaller or missing entirely. Sarah, my attorney, reviewed the file with professional detachment. Let them make their choices, she said. We document the consequences. On day 45 of the 60-day notice, I was checking property tax records when my phone buzzed with a text from Carla. I hadn't heard from my sister directly since the eviction notice at her Sunday dinner. We need to talk alone. I stared at the screen, sensing unusual sincerity in those words. My finger hovered over the reply. Are you still sure about this, Mom? Maya stood in the doorway, watching with worried eyes. I looked at my daughter. Stronger now, sleeping through the night, laughing again, returning. The weight of obligation felt lighter each day as we moved forward without seeking their approval. Some bridges can't be rebuilt, I whispered. And some shouldn't be. The coffee shop buzzed with mid-morning customers, their conversations creating a protective wall of sound. I arrived 20 minutes early, claiming a corner table with clear sight lines to both entrances. Michael stayed in the car, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give me space. I placed my phone on the table, recording app running beneath a screensaver of Maya's senior photos. The manila folder beside it held only part of the financial documents, enough to make my point without showing everything. Sarah's advice echoed in my mind as I rehearsed responses. When Carla tries to guilt you, acknowledge her feelings without taking responsibility. When she downplays Maya's exclusion, redirect to the facts. I straightened my spine as Carla entered, her designer purse swinging. The familiar knot formed in my stomach, the Pavlovian response to family confrontation that had controlled me for decades. I won't let guilt replace boundaries again, I whispered as she approached. You look exhausted, Carla said as she slid into the chair across from me. Her observation wasn't entirely off. Days of resisting mounting family pressure had clearly worn me down. How are you, Carla? I asked, keeping my voice even. She immediately glanced at the folder on the table. This situation is breaking Mom's heart, she said, stirring her coffee a little too forcefully. We need to stick together, Stephanie. That's what family does. I waited, letting silence fill the space. They don't think you'll actually follow through with the eviction, she lowered her voice. Mom keeps saying you'll reconsider before the deadline. Have they started packing? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Carla's eyes dropped to her cup. It's hard for them at their age. They've lived there for 8 years, in a house I've paid for, I reminded her gently. They've had 45 days to make arrangements. Where will they go? Her voice rose, the familiar guilt tactic. Dad's arthritis is worse, and you know Mom can't manage stairs anymore. I sipped water deliberately, letting the cool liquid steady me. Their housing was no longer my responsibility. Maya could come over next time, Carla blurted, leaning forward. If you stop this, we'll make sure she's included. I promise, I said automatically, but the line I'd rehearsed evaporated as anger flared. I slid a single page across the table. Here's a timeline of every time Maya was excluded from family events over the past 3 years, I said quietly. Different occasions, birthdays, holidays, weekend gatherings. She glanced at the paper without touching it. Did you ever stand up for her? I asked. The question hung between us. Her silence spoke louder than any excuse could. The eviction stands, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The financial support ends. Their emergency is not my crisis. Carla's face flushed. So that's it? 30 years of family ties over a hurt feeling at Christmas? I closed the folder without responding, leaving my coffee untouched. Maya is my family. I chose her. I am Maya. The drive home was silent. Michael's hand occasionally squeezed mine at stoplights. You did the right thing, he said as we pulled into our driveway. The simple validation nearly undone me after years of self-doubt. Sarah called, he added. She confirmed they haven't filed any challenges. Legally, there's nothing they can do now. I nodded, tension easing slightly. Pastor Thomas had left a message too, offering to help them find alternative housing. Without you financing it, Michael clarified. Protective as ever. Without me financing it, I agreed. Jennifer from work had promised to stop by that evening. Another ally emerging when I finally allowed myself to be honest about my family situation. You're not alone, she'd said, sharing her own story of setting boundaries with toxic relatives. Passing Maya's bedroom, her therapist's latest project was displayed. A colorful family tree with Michael and me at the trunk, supportive relatives flourishing above, and barren branches representing Helen, Raymond, and Carla, deliberately left without leaves. The first cracks in family unity appeared 3 days later. Helen called, offering partial rent payments if the eviction could be postponed indefinitely. I'm not your landlord, I said calmly. I'm selling the property. That same evening, Raymond reached out, the first admission of fault in a clumsy message. We might have been too harsh on the girl, he admitted, minimizing years of exclusion as if it could sway me. Through Michael's cousin, we learned Carla's husband was resisting the idea of Helen and Raymond moving in. When Helen's rental applications failed due to poor credit, her panic turned into desperate calls I let go to voicemail. The once formidable family was fracturing under the pressure of impending homelessness. Later, while reviewing hospital schedules in our office, the doorbell rang. On the security camera, I saw Carla alone on the porch, shoulders hunched against spring rain. I'll handle this, I told Michael. Carla's mascara had smudged, her usual polished appearance showing strain. We need help with the rental deposit, she said immediately. Just me. They'll pay you back, she added. But the request that would have worked months ago no longer applied. You saw them turn Maya away, I said quietly but firmly. You sat at that table and said nothing. Her expression shifted, the first acknowledgement of consequences beyond inconvenience. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it, she whispered. That was your choice, I replied. This is mine, she left in silence. From her upstairs window, Maya watched her departure. Moments later, I found her thoughtful rather than triumphant. Are you okay, Mom? She asked, reaching for my hand. The fact that she now worried about me as much as I worried about her strengthened my resolve. I'm better than okay, I told her. For the first time in months, truthfully. Day 58 arrived like clockwork. From the living room window, I watched 6 cars arrive in succession. My mother's orchestrated intervention unfolded precisely as expected. They're all here, I called to Michael. Helping Maya with calculus, right on schedule, he said. Calm and resolute. I smoothed my cardigan, trying to steady the slight tremor in my hands. 2 days before the eviction deadline, Helen had brought out her final tactic, the extended family. The doorbell rang. When I opened it, my mother stood there, flanked by Aunt Louise, Uncle Thomas, cousins Brenda and Patrick, and my father's brother Frank with his wife Dorothy. Helen's eyes were already shimmering with practiced tears. We need to talk as a family, she declared, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. They moved in, their expressions a perfect mask of concern. Michael and Maya joined me in the living room as the guests settled on our furniture like a jury. Stephanie, my father began. His voice measured and deliberate. The Bible teaches us to honor our parents. Have you forgotten that commandment? I held his gaze firmly. 8 years of mortgage payments had earned me the right to this moment. We're not here to judge, Aunt Louise added, though her tone suggested otherwise. But your parents are in their 70s. Do you want them to end up on the streets over some misunderstanding? Helen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I never meant to hurt anyone, she whispered. There must have been some confusion about Christmas Eve. Maya shifted uneasily beside me as Helen turned her attention to her. Think about Maya's reputation in the family, Helen said softly, a subtle edge in her voice. She'll be seen as the reason her grandparents lost their home. Is that what you want for her? I placed my hand over Maya's, feeling her cold fingers. The tension had been building ever since the eviction notice arrived. Pastor Thomas had called 3 times urging reconciliation. Church members had phoned with thinly veiled concern. Yesterday, my supervisor mentioned that our family situation was creating tension at work after Helen had called the hospital in tears. An anonymous letter suggested a potential elder abuse investigation. The extended family hinted at financial exploitation because my name was on the deed, claiming I was forcing my elderly relatives into homelessness. Even Michael hadn't been spared. Frank cornered him at the hardware store with pointed questions about controlling his wife. Maybe we should let them stay until they find somewhere, Maya whispered as the relatives split into smaller conversations. My heart ached. After everything, her compassion remained intact, the same quality Helen had long exploited. 1 more month, I thought, just to ease the transition. Michael caught my eye and shook his head slightly, reminding me of our late-night conversation 2 weeks ago. This pattern doesn't end with extensions, he had said. It's not 1 more month, it's the rest of our lives. Later that evening, after our guests had departed with promises to pray for our hearts to soften, I sat with Maya on her bed. Is it cruel to make them leave? She asked, twisting her comforter between her fingers. I chose my words carefully. There's a difference between boundaries and cruelty. Boundaries protect us from harm. Cruelty seeks to inflict pain. They've had 60 days to find somewhere. They have savings, Social Security, and Aunt Carla's home has 3 empty bedrooms. I held her hands. They're counting on your kindness. That's why they brought up your reputation. They know it's their strongest weapon against us. Understanding dawned in Maya's eyes. Like Christmas Eve, I added, when Grandma said there was no room, yet there were empty chairs at the table. Exactly like that. The final day arrived with an unexpected calm. Michael, Maya, and I sat in the living room as security cameras captured Helen and Raymond pulling into the driveway, followed by a small rental truck. No sign of Carla. She'd stopped speaking to our parents after last week's failed attempt to move in. I had prepared for every possibility. Sarah, my attorney, stood discreetly in the kitchen, reviewing the final paperwork. A process server waited down the street in case Helen refused to sign the property release. The property manager was conducting a walkthrough, documenting the house for legal purposes. At exactly noon, the doorbell rang. Helen's expression hardened when she saw the clipboard in my hands. After everything we've done for you, she hissed. Maya stiffened beside me, but her voice remained steady. Would you like some water before you start loading the truck? It's warm today. Helen ignored her. This is your last chance to be reasonable, Stephanie, I said, handing her the forms. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing it for Maya. A flicker of recognition crossed my father's face. We should have treated the girl better, he said quietly. Not to you, but to Helen. We shouldn't have kept her waiting that night. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard. Helen grabbed the papers and signed angrily before pushing the clipboard back. You'll regret this when we're gone, she said, her voice trembling with rage rather than tears. I took the keys she offered. I already regret the years I let you hurt my daughter. The loading took less than 2 hours. Surprisingly few possessions had accumulated in 8 years. Most furniture belonged to the property, bought by me when they moved in with nothing to sit on. Michael helped with the heavier items, despite Helen's cold silence. Maya carefully wrapped the delicate photographs in newspaper without any prompting. I stood in the doorway, observing as the family's dynamics shifted with every box loaded onto the moving truck. Their new address, listed on the rental agreement, was a cramped 1-bedroom apartment across town, in a building with peeling paint. When I drove by yesterday, an eviction notice had already been posted on Unit 3C. They had quickly found new landlords to manipulate. The extended family who had once arrived en masse for the intervention were nowhere to be seen today. The reality of Helen's manipulations had finally set in. 8 years of financial support were ending, and 60 days warning had been ignored. The consequences were now unavoidable. There were no outbursts, no dramatic confrontations, just the quiet finality of doors closing and documents being signed. I stood with Maya and Michael as the rental truck pulled away, followed by my parents' Buick. Helen didn't look back, while Raymond offered a brief, uncertain wave. When they disappeared around the corner, I closed the door softly, the gentle click marking the symbolic end of one chapter. The next morning, Maya found me in the kitchen, concern etched on her face. There's a for sale sign in the yard, she said. Are we moving because of them? I pulled her into a hug. We're moving forward, Not away. My phone buzzed with a notification from a blocked number, most likely Helen, making one final attempt to regain control. I held my finger over the delete button, considering it. Some messages aren't worth hearing, I said, pressing delete before the red badge could tempt me. The message vanished, taking the last traces of guilt with it. Sunlight streamed through our bay windows, casting golden rectangles across the dining table, where college brochures spread out like a paper garden. Maya traced the embossed logo of her top choice while Michael refilled our coffee cups. 2 years had completely transformed our lives. Oregon State has that environmental science program I mentioned, Maya said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The dark shadows that had once lingered under her eyes were gone, replaced by a quiet confidence that made my heart swell. I studied the photographs along the hallway. Maya at her science fair victory, her hiking trip with friends, her beaming face as she received her acceptance letter. Each image reflected the steady reconstruction of her spirit. One brick, one smile at a time. Whatever you choose. We're behind you, Michael said, his hand finding mine under the table. Our new home felt alive with light. Friends dropped by without notice. Colleagues lingered for impromptu dinners, and supportive relatives stayed in the guest rooms during holidays. There was a sense of peace here that felt both earned and natural, like we had finally reached a comfortable altitude after years of struggling. The doorbell chimed. That'll be Jennifer and Dave, I said, rising to answer it. And I bet they brought those cranberry muffins, Maya called after me, heading to the kitchen to make more coffee. By evening, the dining table stretched to its full length. Chairs borrowed from neighbors to accommodate everyone for Christmas Eve dinner. Maya moved with ease between the kitchen and dining room, carrying serving dishes gracefully. No trace remained of the girl who once slept in her coat, waiting for me to come home and erase her pain. We need more water glasses, she announced, disappearing back into the kitchen. I paused, spoon hovering above the mashed potatoes, struck by the contrast to that Christmas Eve 2 years prior. The same holiday, the same meal preparations, yet everything had changed. My mother's voice echoed faintly from the past. No room at the table. Looking around now, every chair was filled with people who genuinely wanted to be there. No forced politeness, no cutting remarks disguised as jokes, no empty performance. Just authentic connection. Michael caught my eye across the room and winked, understanding the significance without a word. Laughter rose around us, light and natural, unlike the strained chuckles at my parents' house. Later, after dessert, Jennifer pulled me aside in the kitchen. She reminded me of myself a decade ago, overworked, eager to please, burdened by family expectations. My brother's been living in my spare bedroom for 8 months, she confided quietly. He hasn't looked for work, criticizes everything I do, and my parents say I'm selfish for wanting my space back. I rinsed cranberry sauce from a serving bowl, considering her words. Your peace matters too, I said gently. Sometimes the kindest act is setting a boundary. Maya appeared in the doorway, overhearing the conversation. Mom helped me understand something important, she said, sliding next to me. Letting someone take advantage of you isn't doing them a favor. It only teaches them that using people works. Jennifer's eyes filled with grateful tears. But how do you actually do it? She asked. Set the boundary, I answered firmly. Start by believing you deserve it. My phone buzzed again. A blocked number. I glanced at the text. Hope you're proud of what you've done. Without reading further, I deleted it. No anxiety, no guilt, just the peaceful dismissal of someone else's attempt to control me. Maya rushed back in, clutching an envelope. Mom, it came early, my acceptance letter. I pulled her into a hug, marveling at the resilient young woman she had become, her capacity for joy inspiring me daily. The next morning, Maya packed an overnight bag for her campus visit. The hesitant girl of 2 years ago had transformed into someone focused on moving forward. I slipped a framed photograph into her suitcase, a snapshot of our chosen family around last Thanksgiving's table. Remember who truly loves you, I whispered. Before she left, I made one final entry in my journal, begun that fateful Christmas Eve. They said there was no room for my daughter at the table. Now there's no room left in our lives for cruelty. We stood together in the doorway, mother and daughter silhouetted against the winter sunlight, stepping forward into the light.